Hello, everyone, and welcome to Strategy Gaming Dojo, where we find, learn, and play one more turn of the great strategy games. Now, today we're going to continue on with our introduction slash tutorial into John Tiller software games. Once you learn the system, you can play any of his games over 600 years of warfare. So we're trying to learn that basic system, and we're doing that playing campaign Antietam, and more specifically, the Blackburn's Ford scenario. And you may remember last time, now this is episode number 8. In the last episode, we talked about firing and melee and the modifiers that affect firing and melee. Well, this time we're going to talk about what happened after we meleeed this Union cavalry force. So we had a Union cavalry force here that we have completely destroyed. I say we, it was Longstreet's brave men from Virginia who came off of this ridge, meleeed with that Union cavalry, and destroyed that unit. And now they're down here by the ford and they're disrupted. And I said last time we're going to figure out what that means. What is disrupted? Why are they disrupted? And now that they are disrupted, what are the effects of that? And given those effects, how are we going to try to get them out of disrupted mode? Okay, so the first thing to know is what where the rubber really meets the road in John Tiller games, and I guess in warfare in general, is when you start taking casualties. So when units start taking casualties, you start separating the guys that look good in their uniforms with the guys that can fight, right? When people start dying next to you, then all of a sudden you test the metal. Well, in this game, you test the morale. So when your unit or a unit of yours, I say your unit as if you're in the 11th Virginian, no, when one of your units takes any casualties, and we can see here all of the units that meleeed took casualties, when they take casualties, they take a morale check. Okay? And what is a morale check? Well, a morale check starts with the base being their quality. And I've mentioned this several times, but this C equates to a dice roll. So A is 6, B is 5, C is 4, D is 3, E is 2, F is 1. That is the base value. And the base value for a unit's morale check is this quality. Now, if you're playing a World War II game, it's actually called morale. But here in the Civil War game and some of his pre-Civil War games, it's called quality. It's the same thing, same idea. And this quality equates to a 4. Now, I always think of C as being average, but actually in Tiller games, it's just slightly above average, right? It's 4 out of 6, meaning 2 out of 3. It's a 66% chance of passing. This is the base. So when we do the morale check, I say we, the computer does the morale check. It rolls a die, and if it is 4 or under, this unit passes its morale check. That's the base case scenario, okay? But just like with firing effectiveness and melee effectiveness, morale and morale checks have modifiers. And I actually wrote these down and I want to go through each one of them because it's one of the most important parts of the game. There are essentially 8 different things that affect your morale check or your unit's morale check. So every unit that takes casualties gets a morale check. And the 8 things that affect that are, is it stacked with a leader? If it is stacked, if your unit is stacked with a leader, when it takes the morale check, it gets a +1. So this C becomes a B. The 4 becomes a 5. It gets a +1. That's the only bonus that you can get. So really, when we're thinking about the good things in a morale check, you're really kind of left to the devices of the quality of your troops, or in a World War II game, the morale of your troops. That's the determinative factor. It is always the base, but the only way you can add to that is if they are stacked with their leader. If they are, and you may remember in a previous episode, I said we want to get Longstreet, all other things being equal, stacked with as many men as we can. The reason being is he gives a +1 bonus when they do their morale check. So that is the one bonus. Now, what are the seven penalties that you could possibly have for your morale check? Well, if this unit were low on ammo, any of these units, they all took a morale check. If any of them were low on ammo, it would be a -1. That's why these supply wagons are important. You always want to, for the obvious reasons, you always want these guys to be supplied. You want them to have bullets. You do not want them to get low or no ammo, for obvious reasons. But it also goes into their morale check. Uh, so that's a -1. If this is during a night turn when they have to take a morale check, it's a -2. In the Civil War and pre-Civil War, for the most part, armies did not fight at night. You may have a very limited engagement. Some scouting units may fire at each other. There may be some random fire at a camp or something, but large scale engagements just did not happen at night as a general rule in the Civil War and pre-Civil War. That is really more of something that started, in World War II or World War One a little bit, and then more in World War II when you had radar, other things that combated dark. But for the most part, during the Civil War and prior to the Civil War, there was just not night fighting. So if this is done at night, it's -2. Okay. If they're taking casualties at night, it's scary. They're out in the middle of nowhere. People are shooting at them. People are dying. Their morale goes down very quickly. It's -2. The next thing is fatigue. Medium fatigue is -1, and high fatigue is -2. Now, looking at our units, they're still green. Fatigue is 22. This is on a scale of 0 to 900. Why it's not, I think of it as 0 to 1,000. If it gets to 900, it's at maximum. Okay. So I think medium is anything above, I want to say 299, so it's 300 and above, and high is 599, so it's 600 and above. But if it's medium, it's a -1. If it's high fatigue, and this will turn to yellow and then red for high fatigue, it would be a -2. And that's all just common sense, right? If guys are running out of bullets, it's a negative. If it's, if they're tired, it's going to be more of a, if you see people getting shot, you're absolutely worn out, you're going to have more of a idea to cut and run, right? So your morale is going to go down very quickly. Um, the next one is enfilade. And you may say, what did you call me, or what are we having for dinner? Um, enfilade is when you are being attacked from the side or from behind. Okay. And it makes sense. It's a French word, I do believe, and it just kind of means envelopment, getting around the side and to the back. Um, and that, again, it's common sense. If you all of a sudden have bullets coming from behind you or to the back and to the left, you're going to say, what the heck? You're going to have a much higher chance of cutting and running. Your morale is going to go down very quickly. So that is a -2 if you are taking casualties from these three hexes behind and to the side. If it's to the front, you don't get that penalty. Enfilade is from the back or to the side. If you were already disrupted, so if we get to next turn and this unit takes more casualties, if it's already disrupted, it's a -1 for its next morale check. Okay, so if it stays disrupted into next turn, we don't pass a rally check, which we'll go into in a minute, and it stays disrupted, it's then a -1 for its next morale check. The final one is other brigades. Okay, during the Civil War, it would have been very unusual for Longstreet's brigade and Bonham's brigade to end up, guys from that, to end up in the same 125-yard hex. they kind of stayed with their brigade. If that did happen, it was likely to cause some confusion. It was people from other states, men you didn't know. Maybe there was initially some confusion whether they were Union or Confederate, blah, blah, blah. That is going to hurt your morale for your morale check by one. So we'll try not to stack units from different brigades together. Now you may say, well, that doesn't look likely here. Well, yeah, this is a smaller scenario. If we were playing the full Battle Bull Run and we had all of these units stretched across the map, let's say we got the Union on the run, it's, very possible, depending on what happens, that we could end up with a hex that has both a Longstreet unit and a Bonham unit, and then they would get a -1 for any morale check. So why did these guys up here get a morale check? Well, they took casualties, okay? They took casualties and the game rolled a morale check for them. Now we know that they took casualties from defensive fire. And when I say defensive fire, I'm not referring to us, like we were on the offense. We were attacking. That Union cavalry unit got that computer aided defensive fire, right? They always get first fire. If we're moving towards them, well, if we're moving at all, okay, or we're attacking them, they get a shot at us. They get first shot and they get to take a shot at us that's completely controlled by the computer. That is called defensive fire. When that happens and we take any casualties, we do a morale check. If we fail that morale check, we become disrupted. And that's what happened here. Now, this must have been a really bad roll for us because let's think about the math here. And really, when I play the game, I don't think about it down to this, hey, it's an algebra question kind of thing. I don't think about it to this level, but while we're doing the tutorial, we might as well talk about how the game does it. Is okay, we took casualties from defensive fire. It's going to do a morale check on all three of these units. This unit is a quality C. That is a 4 on our scale of 1 to 6. It's a 4, but it's stacked with Longstreet, so it gets a +1. That makes it a 5. It does not have any of those negative modifiers, right? It's not low on ammo. It's not a night turn. It's not fatigued. We're attacking, so we're not getting attacked from behind. It wasn't already disrupted, and it's not stacked with other brigades. So it's a 5. Well, evidently, the game rolled a 6, right? Because a 5 or under, we pass our test. Well, it turns out all three failed, so it must have rolled a 6 for the morale check. And that's too bad, you know, because all of our guys are disrupted. So what does disrupted mean? There are two states of stress, I guess you would say, on a unit. The first one, the intermediate one, is disrupted. Disrupted means this unit is now operating at 50% efficiency. Its movement points will be cut in half. Its firing effectiveness is 50%. You can think of this unit as being operating at 50% or half of its normal effectiveness. Okay. Now, we failed this morale check because of defensive fire. Whenever you fail it for defensive fire, you become disrupted. If your casualties are from anything else, so if it's from the Union attacking you, or if it's from them shooting back at you after you shot at them first. So if it's anything other than defensive fire and you fail your morale check, this unit becomes routed. And so disrupted is half, right? 50% effectiveness. Routed is 0% effectiveness. Once a unit routes, it runs and it will end up back here somewhere. Um, it takes off. These guys hightail it out of here. They don't want to fight anymore. They have no more fighting effectiveness. Now they can rally out of that mode, and we'll talk about that in a moment, but they go down to 0% effectiveness, okay, when they rout. That did not happen here. They just disrupted because this was just from defensive fire. We kind of almost oddly failed this. We only had a 16% chance with each of these units. They all failed. Um, but that's okay. We can rally from this disrupted state and get back to normal. And that's all because of our leader. But we're going to talk about that in just a second. Before we do that, we're going to move around and we are going to go to the next turn. So next stack. We still have Bonham down here. Can this guy move? No. Okay. Next stack. It will take you to anybody that you have not moved. All these are units we don't really want to move. Okay. All units have been considered. Okay. Well, let's back up a little bit. So there's nothing more that we can do this turn. And by hitting next turn, we'll see what happens before this next turn, or before it becomes our turn. We'll see what the union's up to. So it's union turn. Let's click on that. And uh-oh, here comes the union, right? And we'll start to see them as we spot them. So one advantage of having those guns up there where we do, like here, is we can start spotting units. Hell, we can spot them all the way up here. That's a long ways away when you think about it, but they're kind of up on a hill, right? They've got supply wagons just like we do. Okay, reinforcements have arrived. 2 units undisrupted out of the 3 units checked. Okay, great. 0 units recovered all fatigue out of 3 units checked. You will get these messages before every turn in every John Tiller game. It will tell you how many of your disruptive units became undisrupted or how many of your routed. We don't have any routed units yet, but it would tell us, how many became unrouted. And when they become unrouted, they become disrupted, right? So it's normal, disrupted, routed. If they become unrouted, they become disrupted. If they become undisrupted, they become normal. So you just have to remember those 3 states. But also we recover fatigue every turn. I can't remember exactly what the percentage amount is. I think maybe 6% or something like that. It goes down if the unit did nothing the turn before. They start to recover fatigue. So, okay, great. We've got a lot of Union forces coming down the road now. We see they've got a gun here, at least. It says X guns. So that could be anything from 1 to 9, I guess. It is still limbered up, but we have spotted it. It'll be interesting to see if we can actually fire at it. Um, let's kind of look at our guns view here. It looks like these guys are in our view. Now, I will tell you one thing about guns. Something does not have to be in its view to fire at it. If you've spotted it, it's called indirect fire. If one of your units, and I would assume it's this unit here that's spotting everything because it's higher up and it's seeing everything and it doesn't have this forest blocking it. Although I guess well, I guess we can see for sure. This spotted this potentially, but let's see everything this can see. Can't see that. Maybe it's these guys. Yep. These guys are doing all the spotting, right? They're seeing all of these things. They're up here on this hill. We'll have to remember to turn them, of course, unless we want to fire them. Well, we'll get to that in a minute. They're doing all the spotting. We could now, as long as it's within range, we could shoot at, let's say, these guys. Even though we can't see them, it's called indirect fire. We have them spotted from another unit. Just something to keep in mind. But let's talk about what they said last time. Well, I was wrong. Let's actually go and look at our reinforcements. Okay, so we have reinforcements. Um, oh, these are coming next turn. Got it. Okay, and that's where they'll be coming. But we got some this time. We saw that in our message. So arrived. And if we double click on that, there's Jubal Early. You have to double click for him to show up on the map. There's Jubal Early and his crew. They have now shown up. We also have these reinforcements for Bonham that are heading up here. Now, how do we know that? It's got the blue on the side. We can look here. Bonham's brigade. They're detached because they are not within Bonham's command radius. That's what detached means. If we go up here, all of these units should be attached, right? Because Bonham, let's click on him, hit his command radius. They're all, well, they're not all. These are all in his command radius. This should say detached. It does. So it will always tell you if a unit is not in the leader's command radius. Now, obviously, this one is not. Let's get this one moving up the road before we forget about it. That's it. Okay, movement 0, 552 men. They're coming to reinforce bottom. But now we have Jubal early here. This is going to be a stacking prop. They put them all here because they arrived here, but these guys obviously would be over the 1,000 limit. So we're going to have to kind of move them one at a time. There goes one. Let's click on him, drag him to here. There's two. So they're going to have to march in kind of a longer column because we would have a stacking problem otherwise. So they're still in their column formation, and we'll put early up here with the at the head of the column. So there we go. And then we had some other guys arrive. Let's see who. Okay, these are some more guns. Great. They're limbered up. They don't have a ton of movement. We'll just, we'll put them here. Well, we tried to get them there. They don't have a ton of movement. They moved what, 5? Okay. So, but they're limbered. They're on the move. These guys are in a column. These guys are in a column. They're all marching up to us. These guys will be fixed the whole scenario. They're just over here looking pretty. Um, let's take this supply wagon and get it off this hill and put it behind that ridge. Now, if we drill down there, see this elevation, that will keep the Union from being able to hit it. As a matter of fact, are these guys exposed? What can they see? Well, if the Union got down here, they can see this supply wagon. So we might want to think about moving it someplace else. Um, hmm. Well, I sure as heck didn't want to do that. Let's move it back here. I don't want it to be there. We can't move it into a forest. Uh, well, we'll think. It's certainly not the most important thing in the world. Now, one thing I wanted to show you before we get into this disruption question, because we now have two units that are no longer disrupted, and that's really the meat of the matter in this episode, and I want to get into it. But before we do that, I do want to show you something that we had kind of only talked about, and that is the artillery dialogue. Now, this unit is actually grayed out. If they are grayed out, they're not either not ready to fire or they don't have anything that they can fire at, okay? But if they're dark, they do have things that they can fire at. So we have 3 batteries. These are called batteries, right? So a unit of guns, no matter how many guns it is a battery. So let's go to this one. And when we click on it, it will take us to that gun. And this is why the artillery dialogue is great. It can really speed up how you go through your artillery. So these guns do have a shot, and they can fire at any of these units that are lit up. Now let's see which ones they can actually see. To do that, we are going to have to get off here and select them. Okay, they can see all of these units. They could see the supply wagon. They can even see this unit way up here. So, they've got great visibility from this hilltop here. Um, so let's double click on them and think about what do we want to shoot at here, right? They have a range of 21, which is very good. You might want to shoot at something that's closer, they'll do more damage, or you may want to shoot at something that, has more value, even if it's not doing as much damage. In this case, we have a limbered artillery unit or cannon guns. Uh, they're still hooked up. They will take more damage because they're not set up here. So I'm going to hit Control, right? Okay. When guns hit guns, for the most part, they cause fatigue. Now, you can knock out a gun. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there are definitely times that you can fire at this and it would knock out this, one of the guns, let's say. Now, we don't know how many they have. It's 0 to 9. But you can also cause fatigue, which makes this gun less effective. Okay. So usually with your artillery, with your cannon, you're going to want to, fire at other guns if you can. It's kind of the highest value target. But Of course, if you have some infantry units that are bearing down on your guys, you may want to fire at them. So let's pull back up the artillery dialogue and you'll see that that battery is now grayed out. Okay, we have fired those two guns or these two guns. What else can fire? Well, let's double click here and here are these guns. They have one unit that they can fire at. You can keep this dialog up. It automatically gives you the gun scope. Right click. Usually you can see like a red line that'll go to them. It seemed to happen a little fast here, but we have disabled two men with these guns. Okay? And if you look here, rest of the artillery dialogue, it looks like we have fired all the guns we can. These guys don't have anyone spotted. These guys do not either. They're too low down here. They could if somebody was here, I guess. I don't know if they have enough range. Well, this gun has enough range to hit here, but nothing more cooking this turn. So let's take this off. Now let's go down here and talk about disrupted. So what happened? Okay, when you have units that are disrupted or routed, but we'll talk about routed a little in a moment. We'll talk about that separately. When you have units that are disrupted, before every turn of yours, there will be a rally check. Now, I know somebody that's from Tiller's organization may say, well, rally check really applies to routing, and I get that, but I also use the term when it comes to disrupted because I think it tells you the same idea or gives you the same idea. And that is when guys or units are disrupted, like this one was or this one was, before your turn the next time, they will do a command check, a rally check. I guess we can call it a command check because it all comes down to the commander. Okay? And the first determinant is, are these units detached or not detached? Now, we just talked about that with Bonham, right? His command radius is here. These units within his command radius that are under his command are attached. This unit is not. It says detached. So when something is doing a rally check, it's very much like a morale check. It's based on a dice roll of 1 to 6. Well, when something is detached, like this unit, it automatically, its morale for this rally check is 1. That's it. It just gets a value of 1. You have a 16% chance of getting it out of disrupted with no other intervening factors. Okay. Um, Artillery, if they get disrupted, their value is always just their quality. Leadership matters less to guns and artillery. They're kind of their own thing. They may be part of Longstreet's brigade here, but essentially their their morale for this rally check is going to be whatever their quality is. Okay. Um, let's see what else. Okay, so if then we get down to your leader. And your leader has a command score. In this case, Longstreet's command score is a C, but all of your leaders have a command score. So let's go to Beauregard. His is a C. All right. So when we go down to when we do what is called a command test or a command check, you do that at the start of each turn to figure out whether things come out of disruption, right? We start that at the top. We start that with Beauregard. Beauregard is a C. His equivalent is a 4, right? So if Beauregard rolls a 4 or less, so he's got a 66% chance of passing with his command C. If he rolls a 4 or less, he passes on a +1 to all of the commanders that are directly underneath him. Now, in bigger scenarios or later in the war, that would be his division commanders would then get a +1 and they would do the same command check. So let's just make up a scenario where Stonewall Jackson is the division commander and is Longstreet's direct supervisor, like it's a shop floor, is his direct commander. Let's just say that Stonewall Jackson is an A commander because I know that he is. So Beauregard's a C. He has to roll a 4 or less. Jackson is a 6. He passes every time. So it kind of doesn't matter if Beauregard passes +1 on to him or not, um, except for this purpose. If Beauregard passes his, he passes a +1 on to Jackson. Jackson automatically passes whether he gets the +1 or not. But if he gets this +1, he then passes a +2 on to Longstreet. Okay? If Beauregard fails his command test, so he rolls, let's say, a 5, he needs to roll a 4 or less, he rolls a 5, he passes nothing on to Jackson. Jackson automatically passes his because he's a 6. He passes a +1 on to Longstreet. Okay, let's take the situation where it's a worse, it's not a very good general. Let's say this guy out here is an F that is Longstreet's direct commander. So Beauregard, let's say, passes. He passes a +1 onto this F. The F goes from a 1 to a 2 because he has this +1. But let's say he rolls a 4. He does not pass anything down to Longstreet for his command test. Let's say he rolls a 2. Now he passes. He passes a +2 down to Longstreet. So you see how the daisy chain works. It's the top commander. He can pass a bonus down to the next commander. That commander either passes or fails. If he passes a +2. If he fails, he passes nothing. Okay? In this case, Longstreet is direct to Beauregard. So Beauregard passed. He passes a +1 to Longstreet. Longstreet is a C, right? This bumps him up to a B. So now all of a sudden Longstreet is a 5. He's a B commander. He's a base C, but he got a +1 from Beauregard. Now he's a B. So he's a 5, right? When units are attached to their commander and they're disrupted, for their rally check, they get their commander's command score. So he's a command C, which is a 4. He gets a +1 from Beauregard, makes him a 5. Every one of these roll, and they have to roll a 5 or less. And if they do, they are no longer disrupted. And that's what happened with these two units. They rolled a 5 or less. This unit rolled a 6, evidently, because they are still disrupted, even though they've got a very good number from Longstreet. And that's why commanders are so important in this game, is that when units become disrupted, they look directly to their commander for a rally check. And that rally check is whatever his command score is, plus any bonus he's getting from above. They roll, and it's all based on that. Regardless of the quality of the troops or their morale, they look to their commander to no longer be disrupted. Okay? Now, we're going to continue playing another turn, and we're going to get some routed troops eventually here, and I will show you how routing works. Now, really, there's not a whole lot we can do. These guys, we may want to scoot back on this hill, and I think I will do that. Um, this will mean that they're moving. They could still fire, but it's out of range, right? Range 2, these guys were not in their range regardless. They would be in the range maybe if we had a range 6, but really early infantry in the Civil War, range 2 or 4 is going to be normal. So we are going to back these guys off and we'll keep them all stacked together because we're going to try to get this one. Well, it wouldn't matter. They just need to be in his command range. So they could be here, but we're going to keep them, with their leader. There's nothing more to move here. I think we need to move these guys, keep moving them up here, get them ready for any action. Can they stack there? They cannot. Can they stack here? No. Um, so this is interesting. We may bring these guys here and then here, and then we may bring these guys. They have a movement of 6 here, then here. These guns, we've already fired. We can't move them. Um, these guys, there's nothing to do with them. These guns we may straighten out a little bit, although they really are sighting most things. Uh, hmm. Actually, I'm going to keep them this way. Now, let's go back here. Let's make sure we'll go through the rest of our units. Nothing to be done, nothing to be done. We've got everybody in his command range now, which is good. We're just kind of waiting around now. We're playing defense, right? We're protecting these fords, so we've considered all of our units now, and we're going to hit next turn. I would like to move the map up here a little bit, and let's see what happens with the, okay, they're coming to the ford now. They're getting in range. We see more Union guns appearing. Generally, the AI in this game is really fast. It resolves turns pretty fast. Even in big scenarios, it doesn't take that long. So now it's going to think a little bit. Now it's going to fire at us. Okay. We have not well, we just did. Okay. That was the computer defensively firing against this unit. Now we didn't do anything. The computer did that. That's defensive fire. And as we see here, reinforcements have again arrived, and we had one unit undisrupted out of one unit checked. So this unit was the only one left on the board that was disrupted, and they passed their test this time. Okay, and then these other guys took casualties. You saw some of those casualties happen because we got fired at offensively. Uh, but that's fine. They passed their morale check. If they would not have passed their morale check, they would have routed because this was offensive fire. The Union moved, they fired at us. It was not defensive, so that morale check would have routed us if we would have failed it. So I'm going to call this episode this time. We've really delved into what disruption means. We've started to get into what these commanders do, why they're important. Oh, we see. Oh no, Longstreet has failed his command test this time. So these guys have a much better chance of disrupting or routing. We'll get into that next time because that stinks. We hate to see that happen. But that'll make things a little more fun. We'll get some units routing, and you can start to see what that means, how we deal with that. But this is a lot of fun. I'm enjoying it. Hopefully, you're learning quite a bit about these games. This same system we talked about today applies to the Panzer campaign games, and it applies to the Revolutionary War game and everything in between. So once you understand this and why units disrupt and why they route, you will really start to get to understand how these games work. But again, thank you as always. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe if you haven't already. I always appreciate that. And for Strategy Gaming Dojo, I'll talk to you next time.